Hello, fellow space engineers. What you just witnessed was a live firing exercise against the Red Ship for testing purposes of the new turret system that we have installed in the Either class cruiser. The turrets themselves are a creation of bored arsonists. I found them on the Steam workshop. They are called the CISF Odin HT Mark III. He made three versions of the turret, one with a single gun, one with two guns, and this one, which is kind of like the battleship or battlecruiser type, that has three guns. All of them are fully controllable and are gyroscopically stabilized. You can either control them individually, or if you do what we did, which is installing the multiple turret control system by Commander Bad Idea, you can actually maneuver them in unison. Currently, the setup of the ship calls for two turrets on the top, staggered, and two turrets mirrored in the bottom. Right now, the turret's depression is really low, so actually they cannot go below zero, maybe -1 degree, -2 degrees. So basically that calls for the top part and the bottom part to either work independently or maybe just fire a full broadside towards either side or the front, but you couldn't combine the whole uh, three turrets on the top, sorry, three guns on the top with the three guns on the bottom for a full broadside of the entire battery of 12 guns. Actually, because of that, the target would have to be relatively parallel along the whole of the ship or right in front of it if you want to hit the target with a full 12 guns. As you saw in the demonstration, we're only using these the top 6 guns mounted in these two turrets. Uh, in actuality, the bottom guns wouldn't have been able to depress enough to hit the target. So we're considering actually installing a different weapon system in the bottom, or maybe working out a way of working them separately, like training and aiming the turrets either in pairs or just by separate. Sadly, the game in its current state doesn't allow for multiple crew members to operate different parts of the ship. So I guess we'll have to wait until the developers change that in the actual game. So, but I want to tell you more about the turrets. The turrets themselves, as I said, they were created by Bohr Arsonist, and they are the Odin HT Mark III turret. They are comprised of several parts, which in turn use several mods, three of them. The popular armor panels by Uncle Steve make up the body of the turret as well as the mantlet holding the three guns. The three guns themselves are actually the CSD battle cannon by Ninja Pirate, and the outer layer, actually the outer layer, the body of the turret and the mantlet are made with the blast door block, the blast door sections by Harak, which is an amazing mod. You can basically recreate any kind of shape that you want and have it like really tight together and not colliding. The armor panels that I mentioned earlier by Uncle Steve make up the top part of the turret, the flat top that you see there. And why is that? As you can see, the turret only is one block tall. That is something that you need in this kind of design, because when you're working with big ship blocks, you have to take into account that each block is 2.5 meters in height. So if you use two blocks and then three blocks to basically cover the rotors, you will end up with a turret that is basically uh, like a three-story building or a two-story building, depending on the size. That's the kind of turret that he had installed in the ship earlier, and they completely blocked out the view from the navigation bridge, and they were too high profile. Like any hit from basically any angle or from any kind of small craft would have taken out a really vital component of them, having the turret pieces fly away and collide against the bridge and things like that. So you don't want that, and the best way to avoid it is actually having a turret that is low profile, that it's basically flush against the hull of the ship. Okay, I'm gonna tell you more about these turrets as we go back into their nesting area, into their actual barbette. That's how they used to call them in the days of the battleship, early 20th century, middle 20th century, basically World War One and World War Two. Um, I guess it's obvious, but I have to say that the main inspiration for such guns is the battleship turret or the battlecruiser turret that we see as the main weapon of such ships in World War Two. So, we are here in the forward weapons control station, which is ideally the station that is going to control the turrets. Like I mentioned before, you can control them individually if you want. Sadly, currently, we're gonna do that with 4 crew members at a time, but I hope eventually we will. So this is gonna be the control station for all the 4 turrets. This is the upper level. This conveyor tube that you see here, it's basically marking the middle section of the ship. So we have this forward weapons control, and if you go below, you can see that it's basically mirrored, but this bottom station controls the modular weapon system that I am developing and installing in all of my ships. If I can get out of this airlock, I can show you. Okay, as you can see, there's the space. You can install 4 of those, 2 on each side in this cruiser. But let's keep talking about the turrets. I'll make a video later explaining the modular weapon system. Okay, so as I was saying, the upper level controls the turrets, this bottom level controls the module, and if we go to the turret station, you find that this is directly under the second turret, the turret that is higher and that is closer to the bridge. The turret that is lower and that is flusher against the deck is that way forwards into the ship. So we have an assembler to manufacture the munitions, and these conveyors would then feed the turret, top turret, the bottom turret, and the 2 side modules. So I designed this to be kind of like a magazine, a protected area in which you protect the crew, you protect the assembling facility, and you also protect the ammunition from an exterior attack or any exterior explosion that could create like a chain reaction and blow up basically a large portion of the ship. So, how is the turret working? As I mentioned before, we're using the multiple turret control system by Commander Barbette. Basically what you have to do is create a fire control mechanism or a fire control system, which is a master that then you have as many surrogates as you want. Each one is a turret, so you can create like this fire control system, and then you can actually surrogate 1, 2, 3, 4, any turrets that you want. The only limitation that you have here with the turrets is the placement of them and the firing arcs that the turrets are going to have. So how it works, basically the code that he wrote, that Commander Barbette wrote, tells the turrets to copy the position of the fire control system's rotors. So if the horizontal rotor is turned to 0 degrees, the surrogate one is going to be turned to 0 degrees too. And if the vertical it's elevated to 45 or even 90 degrees elevation, then the surrogates are going to move accordingly. So this is a great design. It's a really clever idea, and it enables me to move the turrets like I showed before. The only consideration that you have to take when you install such a system is that there is a possible offset. As you can see here, this fire control mechanism is in between the turret that is up there and the turret that is also up there. So why did I install it right in between them? So there won't be any offset. If I would have installed this system like way in the back of the ship, or maybe in the middle of the ship, uh, when I'm pointing it at 0 degrees, I want my turrets to follow it. To, like I mentioned before, to have as little offset as possible. So having the system in a different place potentially creates that offset possibility. I know you can basically mimic the elevation and the rotation, but I also wanted to protect it. So right here in the middle of the hole, this is the most protected position that I can find for it. So it has the layer of heavy armor, then it's going to have component blocks here, and then it's going to have these interior blocks here. So it's not going to be taken out by a single hit. Also, let me show you the system from outside. Let's go into the housing of the turrets. I mentioned earlier that this is inspired by 20th century battleships and battle cruisers, and having such a system, this system is space consuming. So the entire barbette of the turret basically encompasses 2 levels. So you have the actual rotation ring of the turret. Once again, I have a problem with the gate. Okay. This is the actual rotation space. I mean, the turret needs this space if you want it flush against the deck. Otherwise, you have to make a two block high turret, and you potentially would expose this gyroscope. So gyroscope is actually covered by this barbette, which is buried in the hull. Also the conveyor system and the rotor. Since those are protected, they take interior space inside of the hull. Then below that, you have this station, which I want to make it like a storage section, or maybe a service section in case you need to repair the turret. And then down below is the actual turret control. So this is reminiscent of a battleship turret that basically took like 70 plus people to operate. In this case, you only need one, but the space that it consumes is quite similar to that. So it's not a weapon that is going to enable to have like big interior ships. You need to install it in either a large ship, or maybe take into consideration that if you install it in a small ship, it's going to consume a lot of space. So now let me go outside, and I will show you what I was telling you about the offset. So the firing control mechanism is installed right between these 2 red lines here. The red lines actually mark the space that the turrets need to rotate. So you want to have it there, and you want to have the turrets as close together, basically to prevent that. If you separate the turrets too much, for example, if you install turrets on the aft section of the ship, the only way that you're going to be able to concentrate the full firepower of all the turrets is if your target is the same size as your ship. And why is that? Remember that we mentioned that the way that the code works is copying the position of the rotor. So if you want to hit a target that is smaller and that is far, far away, the firing arcs or the firing lines of the turrets would have to cross in a single point that coincides with the target. So the turret that is closer to the bow of the ship will have to turn inwards against this other turret, and this one will have to do the same, turning inwards against this other turret, both, like I mentioned before, meeting at a single point in space, which hopefully is going to coincide with the point that the target is going to occupy. So the code doesn't enable you to do that. Basically, if one turret is facing at 90 degrees, the other one is facing at 90 degrees, and the other one is facing at 90 degrees. So you have like even more fine control of each gun in an 18th century warship with a full broadside. You could like fine tune the cannons, like pulling the rope from one side. You could basically achieve a tighter group, and with this code you cannot achieve a tight group. So that's why I decided to only install the turrets on the front side of the ship to be able to concentrate the fire. Um, Basically, that is telling us is that the code doesn't calculate for distance to the target, so there's no like telemetry system or anything like that, which is understandable because the game itself doesn't work like that for targeting systems. In, it's not a fault on the code. It's not anything that Commander Paredia could have done about it. Actually, he made a great job creating that code. So it's one of the things that you have to cope with and wait for the developers to actually do something about it or maybe enable such feature. Well, that's been all for now. Just wanted to show you this turret operation mechanism. Hope you enjoy it, and I will be uploading this scene to